Time for our Cloud Sustainability Forum. And let's meet our guests today. We have Melanie Benham, who's Solution Engineering Director, Cloud Systems Western Europe at Oracle. And also joining us is Isabelle Kemlin, Vice Chair of the Board at Swedish Data Center Industry Association. Welcome. Great to see both of you today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've got a lot to get through over the next sort of half an hour, 40 minutes or so. Well, let's start with a very basic groundwork kind of question. And for you, how exactly does cloud computing contribute to sustainability? And Melanie, I'll start with you.
Sure. So perhaps I'll start by taking a little bit of a step back on that question and first acknowledge that sustainability covers a really wide range of topics, and you're likely to have started to hear the abbreviation ESG used more and more frequently within industry. And for those of you where this might be a new term, ESG means environment, social governance, and is basically a set of standards measuring a business's impact on the environment, society, and also how transparent and accountable it is. So it's basically one way of looking at sustainability, and of course will mean different things to different people, but essentially what we're talking about here is how we manage resources. And so if we think about it in this context, we can start to understand where we can have an impact and help to essentially, as the EU puts it, and I really like their term, but meet the needs of current society without compromising the needs of future generations. Thereby, I think what we can focus on is making sure that we're using only what we need when we need it in the most efficient way. And so if we perhaps take a look at the environmental aspect only of that, then we're starting to look at things like emissions, energy usage, water usage, recycling, and biodiversity. So I guess at a really high level, and I know Isabelle will have lots to add to this, at a high level, cloud computing can help create a sustainable future in really two ways. One, by providing organizations with more efficient and flexible computing models, which allows organizations to scale their computing resources up and down based on demand. And so in essence, that can help reduce energy consumption and of course, cost. And then the second element that I'd like to touch on is that it can also reduce an organization's carbon footprint. And you're going to hear that term used a lot on this call, I'm sure. By providing more energy efficient computing models. And so when I talk about that, what I'm referring to there is cloud computing data centers themselves are usually more energy efficient, and quite often they're using renewable energy resources. And so there is a lot of design going into these new data centers, cloud data centers, where they also have water efficient strategies and also have strategies in place that reduce waste. So all of this overall can help reduce an organization's environmental impact.
Isabelle.
Yeah, I fully agree. I would like to add also, not only am I representing the Swedish Data Center Industry Association, where I'm the vice chair, but also RISE, which is a research institute of Sweden, where we are focusing on research actually within where I'm based within this area. So it is definitely from a as you were saying, Melanie, taking this starting off from a very, very high level. There are so many things that we actually can do, and I think what we also need to look into is that, well, actually if we look at the data center, it's actually that is the heart of the actual digital infrastructure. And if we look, if there is an app that we need, or an application that we are using, for being able to use that, we actually need a data platform, and then we need the digital infrastructure to support that application that you would like to do. And if we look in a data center, actually the data center itself is not using a lot of energy. It is all the content that actually comes from all the things that we are doing with our smartphones that are not smart. They are actually really stupid because all the content is in a data center. The cloud does not live in the cloud. It actually lives in houses. And we are working closely together within the industry to make sure that from our perspective, what we can, do to make sure that they are sustainable. So I will give you some examples a little bit later, but definitely what you were touching upon, Melanie, we need to start on a high level.
Yeah, forever calling mine my stupid phone now. It seems far more enjoyable. Let's look at some strategies now that organisations can use to try and optimise their energy usage and minimise their carbon footprints in their cloud infrastructure. What would you both recommend? Because without the strategy to lead and guide the whole operation, it's a very difficult place to start from. What would your suggestions be? Melanie, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, sure. There's a quote I heard actually the other day, and it was that, we can't change what we don't control, and you can't control what we don't measure. So I think what's important here is looking at the areas that we are able to measure. And so there's probably 5 key areas that come to mind for me. So the first one is obviously energy efficiency. So making sure that the cloud infrastructure that we're using is energy efficient. And we sometimes do that in our day-to-day lives at the moment, right? If we're looking to buy a fridge and you've got some energy star ratings, it's nice and simple for us to understand. So making sure that we're using energy efficient IT infrastructure and hardware. So that's one area that I'd recommend. The other area, and I touched on it a little bit earlier, which is renewable energy. And there's a few ways that you can do that, but certainly in the green cloud data centers that we're seeing today, certainly the majority would all be using green energy, which is fantastic. We can also start to look at carbon offsets. So there are another number of other alternatives where organisations can purchase carbon offsets to start to neutralise their impact on the environment there. There's also, I guess, the area of data centre optimisation. And so organisations can optimise the energy usage of their data centres by using more efficient cooling systems. There are energy saving measures that you can put in place. As well as high energy efficiency ratings and things like that. And then I guess the final area that I'll touch on is cloud provider collaboration. And this is a really big topic, and you can take this conversation a few ways. But I think organizations can collaborate with their cloud providers to ensure that they're using energy efficient strategies. And that's just not strategies within the data center, that's also strategies within how you're using cloud services. So I'm starting to touch on modernization there. I'm talking about consolidation and things like containerization. So there's lots of operational practices that businesses can implement to also ensure that they have efficient practices in their day-to-day dealings.
Yeah. To follow up on that from an optimization perspective, I definitely think it's also about how you purchase. So to look at the things and actually ask actively regarding sustainability when you are purchasing these kind of services. But I think also what is going to become more and more, that will drive the sustainability is actually leveraging the edge computing, where it's going to be more the big, we don't have to transport all the information and do all the calculations, for example, in a big data center far away. It will be actually done more remotely or closer actually to the actual user itself. And thereby, I think from an energy consumption perspective and carbon footprint, it will offload some of the tasks from the in the edge devices and servers side.
Now, something you've both sort of touched on briefly there, and I just want to go off on this little tangent, is about the importance of the partnerships, because you can have a very well-designed data center with fantastic green credentials. You can have a business or an organization which has a fantastic sustainability strategy. If the two aren't working in collaboration, you might not necessarily get the benefits of both. How important do you both feel that level of communication and marrying up those strategies is to make sure everyone gets the maximum benefit?
I do believe that this will actually also come a little bit with regulation. If we look at it from an EU perspective, very well, actually right now there have been a decision taken with the new EU directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, that is coming, and it is going to define how, well, a lot of things that we need to look into the details on how things are efficient in a data center from a sustainability perspective. It's going to look at the terms like power usage effectiveness, so how much energy is used by the data center infrastructure compared to the IT equipment. Renewable energy factor, so measures how renewable energy is used by the data center. Carbon usage effectiveness, so show how much carbon is emitted by the data center per unit of the IT energy, and then also looking at the water effectiveness. With these things, with these new regulations that have been actually developed in close cooperation with the industry, it will actually kind of all put us together in the same room to continue to work on these topics, because we also have the EU taxonomy from an investor perspective that is also going to steer where the investors are going to put their money. And then, of course, there's a lot of, for example, industrial funds that want to have a digital part in their portfolio and a sustainable digital part of their portfolio. And then they are looking at these regulations. So I think we should look at these things. They are coming, they are here. But one extremely important thing right now is that this is an EU directive, but now it's going to transfer into local laws. And when it becomes local laws, it is really a law. So then we actually in the industry has a huge responsibility to work closely with each government in each local country to make sure that there is an understanding of what this really means, so it actually hits the right targets of what we all try to achieve, and that's to have a more sustainable kind of future for future generations.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, Isabelle, you've touched on something very pertinent there, that pressure on businesses and us as individuals is becoming more and more apparent with the regulation that's changing. And I think there is a lot of work being done at the moment to try and consolidate the way in which we are all being measured, so that those measurements drive more value. And so with that, it's imperative that we work together with our partners, with our suppliers, to be on the forefront of this. You don't want to be behind the eight ball with regulation. You need to be on the forefront, and so we need to work together. And I think it's worth mentioning or acknowledging that this is a journey to the cloud. And in reality, there may be some workloads that we're struggling to get there. And And there was a statistic that came out the other day that 30% of organizations have of their estate is legacy. And these workloads are bringing little to no value to the business. And if you think about that, these workloads, the platforms are still turned on. They're still using emissions. So there's lots of things that we can do now to get our house in order for that move to the cloud, where there is additional benefits for the environment. So it is a journey, and there is lots that we can do now together to prepare you for the cloud.
Because it's all well and good looking to the future and knowing what your cloud organization would be, when there's still things you could be doing in the here and now to improve things, I guess quickly. Is that really what you're saying there, Melanie?
Exactly.
Moving on quickly to something else both of you have touched on briefly, and that was about data center design and operations. For you, what have been the biggest developments there have been in recent years to enhance their sustainability? Because I'm sure in a very short space of time there's been tremendous progress.
Yes, definitely. I can take it a little bit from a research perspective with RISE Research Institute Sweden. Like there we can really see what's happening, and now with the last bits and pieces with the generative AI that's just completely, explode. And we can also see that, some of the big hyperscalers are pulling the brake on their designs to make sure that they actually have a future sustainable solution. It's not the solution just because it's going to consume a lot of energy to place it where it's green energy, and there is not unlimited green energy. So I think here it's very, very important that we are all wise from the beginning on how we do set it up. And what we see, for example, from a RISE perspective, there is a lot of things going on where we are, for example, looking at cooling, air cooling, liquid cooling. There are heat reuse. Sometimes in a few places where I've been on stage, I've talked about where do you put your data center, where as the old Vikings, they actually placed where did they choose to live? They chosen to live where it's good communication, so where the rivers met with the sea. For us in the data center industry, it's where the power cables meet with the internet cables. But what we are going to see, and the third dimension that is going to come up right now also, is how where can you reuse your heat? So it's going to be like three-dimensional where you actually put down your data center. So it's a lot of things and a lot of development going on within these areas. Fuel cells for prime power, for example, is something else that we're looking at, because the power is not always there where you want it to be and need it to be. Ancillary services for being able to give back, because coming externally from what we're actually sometimes building is power stations that we're not using, because they are going to be there if in case of something breaks down. Then these power stations are going to kick in. So if we can actually utilize that and give back to the grid energy, and when there is a possibility, then that's also a way that is coming, and it's a lot of things happening within this area.
Yeah, I think Isabelle's touched on all the key elements there, really, of data center design with energy efficiency and conservation, smart cooling, reduced water usage, and water conservation. So you've touched on all really the key elements there. And I guess from a broader perspective, it's and you did mention this, Isabelle, that there are broader initiatives within organizations to help neutralize your impact. And that could even be through volunteering initiatives, planting trees. There's so many elements to this big topic of sustainability that also includes a social element as well as that environmental element.
One thing I did want to move into next, and it's something we've briefly touched on already, and that is in partnerships. How do you feel organisations can make sure they are partnering with environmentally conscious providers and suppliers? What's your best advice on that?
Yeah, perhaps I think really it's about looking for providers with a strong environmental track record, really. So when you're making your selection for a cloud provider, have a look and do your research, have a look at their environmental policies and practices, and look for providers that have a commitment to reducing their environmental impact, such as what they're doing about renewable energy or implementing energy efficiency measures, or what they're doing to reduce waste. Ask about their data center practices, because I guess these are essentially a major source of energy consumption. I think the statistic I heard the other day was 3% of emissions globally comes from data centers, and that's going to increase to 4%, I think, in 2024. And that was on par with the aviation industry, which shocked me, actually. So, get into the detail of what they're doing in their data centers and as a company to reduce their emissions and reduce their carbon footprint. And there is a lot of information out there publicly available on cloud providers' websites, so you can evaluate their sustainability reporting and find data sheets on their public websites.
I think one thing is actually also to help to inform, and then I want to go back to the stupid, not the smartphone. It is really that drives the energy consumption in the data centers. It's not the data centers themselves, it is the content. And we of course see that it is exploding, but we need to help to, like in the industry, we need to start to talk about that this is a digital infrastructure. Just like up in the northern parts of Sweden, where they are now building several new mines. They need double tracks to be able to take the iron out to boats waiting outside of Norway to take it to other places. The reason is that they need double tracks. They need a good digital infrastructure, and this is what we are. We are part of the digital infrastructure that is enabler for actually a lot of sustainable kind of applications, making a lot of others' lives much better. So apart from, we of course are working very hard with this, I think these things are also important to remember and help to kind of inform the society, actually, because sometimes it's the data centers that has a bad reputation, but we need to show decision makers and other stakeholders that and even private persons that it needs to come down to each and every one of us. And I do believe that in the future we will have apps that are labeled green, depending on if they are in a data center that it's using coal, or a data center that is using green energy.
I don't think we're too far away from that point. I think that would be very successful. Can we get into some more examples? Because we have the pleasure of both of your experience today. What examples do you have of organisations that have been putting in place sustainable practices in their cloud operations? What sort of things have you seen and thought, that is a fantastic idea? Why hasn't that been done before? Why aren't more people operating like this?
Do you want to go, Melanie?
Sure. Well, I guess, we have a strategy at Oracle, and it's called Oracle at Oracle. So we look at ourselves first, and we implement best practice internally, and then in turn, we're able to take that out to the market. So So I'm happy to talk about Oracle and some of the sustainable practices that we've implemented ourselves. And that includes the use of renewable energy and more energy efficient measures and waste reduction initiatives. And perhaps one of them that's worth highlighting is our recycle and reuse program. So, and I think in 2022, we recycled 99.9% of our IT infrastructure. So these are some of the programs that we've really put some focus on, and we're seeing huge improvements over the last few years. And this all contributes to some of these environmental impacts. I think equally, Oracle's committed to using 100% renewable energy for all of its global operations by 2025. And I think already at least 16 of our data centers are run on renewable energy. So these are some of the things that we can start to look at. Equally, I touched on before that there are other things that we can do to support or reduce the amount of emissions, and I touched on consolidation. And I think you can read the full story on our website, but one of our large customers, Deutsche Bank, who I'm sure we've all heard of, they recently embarked on an IT modernization project. And so that was aiming to simplify the bank's operations, exercise better controls, and reduce expenses and energy consumption. And so through the Exadata Cloud at Customer, they gained significant consolidation benefits through that program. And they expect, through that move to cloud, to reduce by more than 50% their energy usage across more than 10,000 databases. So, here, the more than 50% in expected energy savings comes from the Oracle Exadata machines running databases more efficiently than the old x86 servers that were in use. So I guess there's some of the stories of consolidation benefits and reducing those emissions that some of our customers are moving forward with.
Yeah, we have also seen and are actually testing what we are talking about as holistic cooling, where you actually look at cooling from normally when you cool something, you just have a set point of a temperature in a room. But then if you actually look at it on a very detailed, like what we really need to cool is in the end the chip, or each server. So looking at the temperature there, and also to distribute the load in between, but to steer the cooling machine and also steer the load in the servers, and even close down the servers that are not used. So these are the things where it's actually like when we have done these kind of tests, you can, if you go into a room, you hear the sound like, ooh. It's like, it's so different from a room full where you just cool it as in like to this normal way on just a set temperature in the total room. So there are so many things going on, and I can't talk about specific customers here, but this is just one example of how the research and is in the forefront and applicable today.
And that's a great example as well. We do have questions coming in from the audience, so I'll just go to one of those now. And I guess this is beginning from the ground up, really, and that was looking for some advice on how you can better understand the environmental impact of IT operations within a business. What advice would you have for that member of the audience? How can they better understand their environmental impact through their IT operations?
Okay. I mean, I could take that, and I'm coming from the perspective of looking at your IT infrastructure estate, because the conversation is largely focused around data centers. So I hope that's the right angle. that actually we have a tool at Oracle, which is a carbon emission estimator tool. And there's 3 scenarios actually that we can run with our customers. And one of that is looking at the CO2 emissions that you're using through energy consumption within the Oracle Cloud. So we can look at consumption patterns and make some assumptions there to give you an indication of your energy consumption and CO2 emissions. Equally, the second scenario we can look at is if you're using Oracle on-premise infrastructure, so we can then take a look at what that scenario looks like and then make some deductions there. But the third scenario, and this is the one that I really like, is that if we took a look at your existing infrastructure today and we can make some estimations around the core counts that you're using, what we're able to do is map that to a target solution. So whether that was modernizing onto new IT infrastructure or moving to the cloud, we can then assess the CO2 emission savings that you can make from that path. So we're able to run some really good modeling with our customers to actually measure the CO2 impact from modernizing and consolidating and making that move to the cloud. So there's some of the areas that I would recommend and certainly work with our customers and partners.
Isabelle? Yeah, I think also, as I mentioned earlier, what's coming up right now is you need to measure things. From a research institute's perspective, that's what we like. We like to, do the maths, do the calculations, see the results, and test in reality. So we have, test beds of different ways of testing things. But that kind of comes also in great combination with the regulations that are coming, and actively ask for those when you are purchasing these kind of services. And as you said, Melanie, there are even tools where you can actually use this as a way of comparing different things, because of course the emissions is one thing and the cost is another thing. But I think also what we do see is that it's there is probably not just a cloud strategy when you're doing your IT strategy. There are things are going back and forth into the cloud, and are you having all of your things in the cloud, or are you having some parts beside you? What's really in there? But what we definitely can see from a sustainability perspective, it's way more efficient to have it in a cloud.
The next area I wanted to go into when it comes to sustainability, and it's a key theme in any sustainability discussion in any industry you choose to pick, and that is the offset between sustainability and performance. Do we feel the two things are getting closer together now? It was less of a historic issue that if you wanted to have something that's very sustainable, the performance wouldn't be there. Do you feel when it comes to the cloud sustainability question, those two issues are now getting closer together?
Absolutely. I think they align. I mean, sustainability and profitability actually closely align. And if I think about what my team does on a day-to-day basis, through our technology, we're aiming to help customers, reduce their IT administration, reduce their costs, improve performance. And a lot of this plays into building a sustainable technology footprint. So for me, they really do align.
Isabelle?
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, this is kind of the beauty of being in an industry that consumes a lot of energy. Because when the sustainability argument is there, it's also a lot about reducing the energy cost bill. So that actually goes hand in hand. I think that from that perspective, we do definitely see that there is good progress being done, and that it's aligned, not fully, of course, because there are investments that need to take place, and also now with the reuse of heat, where there will be investments that need to be done in a different way than previously. But that's actually also coming with legislation. And we need to make sure that we are also, of course, competitive going forward.
Okay, well, we are. Sorry, continue.
Neil, I was just going to add to that, because we've talked a lot about, the platforms and the infrastructure, but it's worth just acknowledging that all of this is supporting the technology and capabilities above that. So I'm talking about things like analytics, machine learning, AI, all the applications, and all of this data and all this goodness is driving further efficiencies out in the field. So whilst this conversation is focused a lot on the underlying infrastructure, there's all the operational efficiencies and benefits that you get from all the applications, the analytics, the machine learning, all that good stuff.
Very much a virtuous circle. They both support each other in terms of progress. And what I wanted to get onto finally, as we are nearly out of time, is looking to the future and looking at the future trends. So much progress has been made, but where do you both feel the next areas of progress will be in improving the sustainability of cloud infrastructure?
Well, I mean, AI is going to take us to new heights. So I think I'm just going to say watch this space. It's very interesting times, and technology and data is at the forefront of all of it. So not to mention all the engineering that's going into data center development. But I think maybe, Isabelle, you might have more insight there.
No, I am. Yes, it's really, really, really key also that we think about the sustainability perspective when we are building this, because it is. It's, as I said in the beginning, it's not just to place it where you think that you have green energy and unlimited amount of power. There is not that. That's not the solution. The solution is to be smart now, when this is kind of exploding from the very beginning, to make smart algorithms to make smart decisions from a sustainability perspective, also to bring in that kind of software perspective, and not just the hardware. But from a hardware perspective, we definitely see the cooling that is right now one of the biggest. It will happen. So many things there.
Okay, that seems like a good place for us to round things up. We've had a good look to the future, we've looked at progress, we've looked at how people can partner, so there's plenty of things for people to work with there. So I'd like to thank you both for your company this afternoon. Really enjoyed it. We've got through a tremendous amount. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Okay, thanks for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much indeed.